Download Toca Boca World today.
The man who murdered my mother has been living 3 doors down from my brother. I was 7 years old when I held my hand over my brother's mouth in order to keep him alive. My brother Javier was 5. We were inside the hallway closet, and I had him pressed against my chest. I watched through the closet slates a man in a ski mask wearing all black tearing through our house. He flipped the kitchen table. He ripped drawers out of the kitchen dresser and dumped them on the floor. My mothers ran at the man with a broom and screeched, "Get out of my house!" The man's ski mask fell as the broom whacked him across the face. The man took the broom from our mother and raised it above her head. Javier squirmed against me, and I looked down at him, squeezing him tighter, making sure he couldn't see or hear anything. When I looked back through the slates, I spotted the shadow of the man moving from room to room, stretching and shrinking across the wall as he searched. My heartbeat was so loud in my ears, I was terrified he could hear it through the closet door. Then the shadow grew larger on the wall. He was coming toward us. I watched his boots move closer to me. 1 step, 2 steps. He stopped directly in front of the closet. I could see his belt buckle through the gap. His hand reached for the closet door handle. Javier whimpered against my palm, and I pressed down so hard I felt his teeth scrape against my fingers. My skin tore and blood dripped down. The handle rattled. I looked up and saw the man's deep green eyes. Then my mother's arms wrapped around the man's arm, pulling him away from us. "You want money? All I have is hidden in the kitchen." The man's hand dropped from the handle. He turned. "Lead the way, gorgeous." His boots moved away from us, back down the hall. A few minutes later, the man spoke again from the kitchen. "Not much, but it'll do. You know, if you had listened to me earlier, things could have been different. Too bad you've seen my face." I heard a hand slap. I held Javier tighter against me. My mother whimpered and I heard her body hit the floor. Then I heard a thud, and then there was nothing. I tightened my grip over Javier's eyes, but kept my own open, refusing to look away. If I closed mine, no one would know what happened in this house. The man walked past the closet on his way out of our home. His shoes left a trail of red footprints on the hardwood, and the pattern went left foot, right foot, right foot, all the way to the front door. The front door slammed. I counted to 100 in my head and opened the closet. I sat Javier down and said, "Stay. Don't move or open your eyes until you hear my voice, okay?" He nodded his head. Then he reached into his pajama pocket, pulled out his Zorro action figure, and detached one of the plastic katanas. The blade was barely the length of my pinky finger. He held it out to me with both hands, like he was presenting a real weapon. "Take this," he whispered, "to protect yourself." I looked at my brother, and something inside me cracked, but I didn't let it show. I smiled. I closed my hand around the tiny sword and said, "Thank you. I'll be right back." He nodded again. I palmed the plastic sword and walked to the kitchen alone, tiptoeing the whole way, terrified of making a sound. Every step felt like walking toward my own doom. I made it to the kitchen entryway. The window above the sink was open. 2 birds sat on the windowsill. Their chirping caught my attention, their heads tilted, watching everything with their small black eyes. I almost smiled. Then I looked down at the kitchen floor and my face paled. My knees buckled, but I grabbed the counter to keep from falling. My mother lay unconscious at my feet. Her gray eyes were now red and white. Instead of looking at her any longer, I reached over to the counter where my mother's phone was, and I called 911. "Hello? A man just did something very bad to my mommy. He left red footprints out the door. No, she's not moving or breathing." I stared at my mother with curious horror as I gave the operator my address. I didn't cry until after I hung up. I ended up in a courtroom 8 months later. I was so small in the witness chair, but I spoke into the microphone with all my confidence. That man sitting over there was the one who hurt my mommy. I watched from the closet as he talked about her owing him money for a bet on a horse. I sat in the front row as the judge banged the gavel and declared, "Sloan Merrick is found guilty." That was the first time I'd heard his name. They put him in handcuffs and started walking him out. However, he quickly shoved his way through his armed guards, sending them stumbling back. He bolted straight towards me. I refused to flinch as he reached forward. My fingernails dug so deep into the wooden armrest, I felt the grain split under them. He laughed and his spit hit my face. "I'll find you. I don't care how long it takes. I'll make you pay for locking me up." The courtroom erupted. Multiple men in security uniforms rushed forward and grabbed him. The bailiff shoved him forward. I held eye contact as they dragged him out, all the way until the door closed behind him. Someone patted me on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, he can't hurt you anymore." I stood there, knowing that somehow that wasn't true. 15 years later, I was jogging around my neighborhood with my boyfriend Daniel beside me and my phone pressed to my ear. Javier was on the other end saying, "My professor gave me the most annoying assignment. I have to write about my most serious trauma." I froze mid-stride. Daniel slowed to a stop beside me, giving me a worried look. "Write about something else." Something clanged in the background on his end. Javier laughed. "Sorry, I knocked over one of my practice swords." "Hey, maybe I'll write about the time I impaled my hand in a sword fight when we were 12. I stood up straighter, and Daniel had to take a step back not to get hit. Perfect. Very dramatic. I gotta go. Love you, loser. Love you too. I hung up as we reached my mailbox. My fingers touched a plain envelope sitting at the bottom. No postmark. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a white paper with 2 mysterious red stains and a single handwritten line. I kept my promise. "I'll see you soon, Kylie." My knees hit the grass and I couldn't breathe. Daniel crouched beside me, his hand on my back. Hey, breathe. Talk to me. What does it say?" I handed it to him. He read it, and his expression darkened. "Who wrote this?" I shook my head. He pulled me closer. "Kylie, who is this from?" I looked up at him, crying. "The man who killed my mother." Daniel went quiet. Then he said, "You need to call your brother back. Right now." I called Javier, and as soon as he answered, I said, "I just got a letter. It says, I kept my promise." Javier went quiet, then said, "Yeah, I got a letter too." I dug my nails into my knee. "What did yours say?" He paused. "She screamed your name as she bled out." Daniel was reading my face the entire time. I pressed the phone closer against my ear. Javier tried to keep his voice light. "But it's a joke, right? Some prank?" "Yeah, totally a joke. Do me a favor and leave the letter in your mailbox. I might come get it later." "Why?" "Because I'm your sister, that's why. Do it, loser. Love you. Love you too." I hung up. Daniel took my hands. "What did Javier's letter say?" I told him. His jaw tightened. "This person knows details about what happened to your mother. Details that aren't public, right?" I stared at him. I hadn't even processed that yet. Terror filled his voice as he grabbed both my arms. "He's so close, Kylie. Whoever sent these is close to both you and your brother." The next morning, Daniel drove me to the police station. I brought both letters in a folder, along with the court transcripts and the recorded threat from years ago. I walked into the precinct and asked to speak to a detective, then waited for over an hour before a man wearing an old brown suit came out. He led us to his desk. "Hi, I'm Detective Guster. I've reviewed your mother's case file. How unfortunate the charges were overturned, miss." My jaw dropped. "What do you mean?" Detective Guster spoke slowly. "Sloan was released about 8 months ago over a technicality. It appears no one got through to you." I couldn't speak. Daniel leaned forward. "She was 7 years old when she testified, and no one told her that her mother's murderer was walking free?" Detective Guster looked uncomfortable. "We apologize for the oversight." I slid the letters across his desk. He read them carefully, then gave me a sympathetic look. "There's no direct threat of violence here. Nothing tying these to a specific individual. I'd recommend filing for a restraining order, but without knowing his current address." Daniel put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Detective, I understand. We'll document everything going forward." I looked at Daniel. He gave me a small, "Trust me, let's go," nod. Detective Guster handed me his card. "Call if anything escalates." The moment we got in the car, Daniel hit the steering wheel. "He's been out for 8 months. 8 months, and nobody told you." He turned to face me. "You shouldn't be sleeping alone. Do you want to invite Javier over?" I shook my head. "No, I don't want him to be more involved than he already is. Can you stay with me?" Daniel smiled and nodded. "We have to make a stop first." We walked into my home a few hours later with security cameras and new deadbolts. Daniel held the bags up, smiling. "Hopefully this brings you peace of mind. Let's get them set up." I headed to my bedroom, then slid a knife I bought under my pillow while Daniel watched from the doorway. He just pulled the blackout curtains shut and gave me a reassuring smile. 4 days later, I went to work, hoping for a semblance of normalcy. However, as soon as I walked into my office, I saw a letter on the floor. It must have been slipped underneath. I picked it up and read, "You wore a blue blouse and off-white silk pants yesterday. You looked beautiful. Tonight, I'll be paying you a visit in person." My hands went numb. He knew where I worked. He'd been watching me. I called Detective Guster first. He finally answered after the 3rd call. After explaining the note, he only said, "The best you can do is document everything." Then he hung up. I FaceTimed Daniel next. His voice sounded panicked. "This grown man is watching you. He knows where you work, and now he's telling you he's coming tonight?" Yes, I'm coming to get you, right now. When we got to my apartment, Daniel walked me to the front door and stopped. He crouched down and ran his finger along the lock plate. There's a scratch here that wasn't here yesterday. Someone tried to pick this lock. I stared at the scratch and felt the floor disappear beneath me. I wanted to run away. I was so scared. Daniel stood up and cupped my face. I'm not going anywhere, okay? I'm right here. Tears welled in my eyes. I can't ask that of you, Daniel. I don't even have spare clothes for you. He smiled gently. It's okay. I have a suitcase in my trunk with some of my stuff. I was surprised, but he pulled me into a hug. He stayed for a few hours, helping me feel safe. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it and he frowned. It's work. Emergency at the office. I have to leave for a few hours. He pulled me close. I'll come back as soon as I can. Lock up behind me. He left. The apartment went quiet. I locked the deadbolt. Then I stared at the door and thought about the note. Then I dragged the kitchen table across the floor and shoved it against the front door. I pushed the couch behind it. I piled random vases, lamps, and books on top of the table and couch. It looked like a garage sale. Then I sat on the floor in the hallway with my back against the wall and the kitchen knife in my lap. I pulled my knees to my chest and watched the door. At 1 a.m., I heard footsteps. The door unlocked and the handle moved. Then something pushed against the door harder. The table scraped an inch across the floor. My grip tightened on the knife until my knuckles turned white. I stood up and opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. The door pushed again and the couch groaned against the tile. Kylie! Daniel's voice was muffled through the door. Kylie, it's me. Open up. I dropped the knife and it clattered on the floor. I shoved the furniture out of the way with shaking hands. Daniel stood in the hallway, wide-eyed and out of breath. I finished up at work and got worried. Are you okay? I sobbed against him. I thought he was here. I thought you were him. He held me tighter. I'm here. I'm right here. He stayed the rest of the night. I fell asleep with my head on his chest. The next morning, I checked the security camera footage from the night before, and my whole body seized. A figure stood in the alley beside my bedroom window at 2 a.m., hood up, face covered. He held up a piece of paper to the lens that read, "You look so cute holding a knife." Then he turned and walked away. He had been here after all. I drove myself to the police station and showed Detective Guster the footage. He watched it, leaned back, and said,
Je te faisais confiance!
The figure's face is completely obscured. No identifying features, no direct threat of physical harm. Standing on a public sidewalk is not a crime. He was outside my window at 2 in the morning, after he sent me a letter promising he'd come, and I understand how unsettling that is. But without a clear threat or identification,